Are you all going to make sure everybody introduces themselves? Because I certainly don't know who the agency people are.
We can do, yep, we can do that.
Thank you.
So my name's Chuck Spiegel. I'm the plant superintendent here at Kenmore. I started in this role in August of last year. I've been with the company for 17 years, primarily in Seattle. I'm happy to help however I can.
Great. Annie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Livengood. I am an environmental specialist for the Washington region for Glacier. I started with the company in summer of 2022 as an environmental intern after graduating from University of Washington in Seattle. So I focus on air and water monitoring. And again, like Chuck said, happy to help in any way that I can.
Josh.
Hi, I'm Josh Jensen with Anchor QEA. I've been doing planning and permitting for about 15 years there and have supported Glacier and Cal Portland for a number of those years. And just a heads up, this is being recorded and transcribed. I think it missed Pete Stoltz's introduction and his background in sediment and his work for Cal Portland and Glacier, but I think we've got everything else from there.
Well, we'll spare everybody that conversation again. Riley, I'll hand it off to you and let you introduce the agency folks.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Riley Rosbatham. I'm the planner with the City of Kenmore Development Services Department. So I've been reviewing the shoreline substantial development permit exemption and the SEPA for the project. And then we've got Samantha Loyuk here as well.
Hi, I'm Samantha Luyuk, City of Kenmore Development Services Director. Riley, do you want to introduce who's here from the other agencies?
Sure, yeah, I believe we have Laura Inouye from the Department of Ecology. We've got Jesse Dykstra with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and Trevor Williams with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. But feel free to introduce yourselves as well if you want. Well, it looks like also Kelsey Vander Elst with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as well.
Well, I'm Elizabeth Mooney. I live in Kenmore since 1995. I'm president of People for Environmentally Responsible Kenmore, and I'm also a citizen and a grandmother and very concerned about toxins and getting the truth out there. I also will tell you that I know the founders of Anchor QEA and would be, well, I'll leave it at that.
I think at this point, I think would be a good time to get started on the presentation. I think just with all the people participating, it would probably take a little too long to go through everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me go ahead and get started here. So we're going to go through a quick review here. I think everybody knows where the site is. So what we're proposing to do is maintenance dredge, basically spilled sand and gravel that has accumulated here right along the edge of our barge loading facility. So what has happened is that we pull our barges right in here. They offload with a loader into a hopper that sits here, and material is spilled over the side and accumulated in this area, and kind of spread back and forth along the edge of the slip. And this is a cross section of kind of how that lays in there. And so what the problem is that the materials accumulated to such an extent that now we can't bring in full barges. And this wasn't an issue before the channel was dredged, but now, because the channel being shallow limited how big of barges, or not how big of barges, we still bring the same size barges, but basically we can't load them all the way. And so, the efficiency is just reduced because we're light loading the barges to bring in. So what we're proposing to do is basically dredge down to this. You see where this hatching is, there's a tow protection that was placed in 2000. So we would dredge down to this elevation where the tow protection is, remove this material. So how did this material accumulate? There was this hopper system that is used to place the material, and we had a problem prior to 2010 with the hopper basically bringing material back on the belt, and also some problems with it spilling when they were using the loader that allowed the material to spill over the side. We've largely rectified that by reconfiguring this system and placing this. There's a little flapper thing here that catches and prevents the material from getting behind the loader. And so in 2010, we pretty much eliminated our spillage problem, which is pretty important, and a big concern for us. We don't want to have to continue to have this issue going forward. And it was a problem that had to happen historically. So this is where that tow protection lays along the shoreline. So this is the upland portion of the property. You see the hopper laid here. This is the plans from when the tow protection was placed. So this is the old hopper prior to 2010. But this area laying out here is where that tow protection sits on the outside of the bulkhead. So the barge basically lays over the top of this tow protection, and the material that's spilled is laying over the top of this tow protection. And this is how it was drawn when it was originally designed back and placed back in 2000. And this was our original dredge depth prior to placing the tow protection. So, so basically all this material down, all through here should be clean dredge or clean sand and gravel material. And this is an old dredge permit, an old corn permit from 1997. So it shows the elevation that they were permitting to dredge to. So they dredged to elevation 2 with a 1 foot over dredge. It's pretty common in a dredge permit that they would have a tolerance level that the dredge could go to 1 foot over dredge, especially at this time when they were mostly interested in getting it done fast, not real precise. And if you look back up here at this cross section, we're going to elevation 4.5, and here's elevation 2 down here. So essentially all this material down here is filled sand and gravel that's been there over time, and the material that was here before, was dredged previously before that, and has accumulated over time, gravel that's been spilled. But so where does this sand and gravel come from? I thought it might be helpful to talk a little bit about that, because we talked about, it's clean, and everybody's like, well, how do you know it's clean? So this is where the majority of the material comes from. This is our DuPont mine site. So the material comes out of is mined in this area. This is a clean sand and gravel deposit. This is where the majority of sand and gravel comes from for basically the Seattle metropolitan area. It is mined in this area. It's loaded onto a conveyor. It goes up into this process area, and then it goes out to the conveyor out this way where it's loaded on a barge. So this is a picture of the mining. It's probably it's approximately like 200 foot elevation. So they strip off about the top 3 feet of topsoil. This is all real clean sand and gravel material. Yeah, a dozer pushes it down, a loader picks it up, puts it on a conveyor belt. The conveyor takes it up to the processing plant. In the processing plant, it's sorted, it's screened and sorted. Round rock goes into different size gradations on one side. Material that's over like 1.5 inches gets crushed and goes into different size pile gradations on the other side. All the silt is washed out. So water is used to clean all material out. Water is used to sort the sand into different size sand. So all this material is washed in the process of sorting it and getting it into the final product. Then there's tunnels underneath these piles. So when they order up a certain product, they can put in a code and it measures out how much material needs to come out. It goes onto the conveyor in the right gradation, and it goes out on this conveyor to the load out. Some materials actually go through another wash process. There's a wash plant right here where it gets washed again to make sure it's extra clean. Doesn't have any silt clay on it. This is just another picture of that processing plant. Goes out to the conveyor where it's loaded on a barge. And this is just a picture of the barge where it loads on. This is a much bigger barge than ever comes into Kenmore, but this is just an example of how that works. So, my point here is that this material is washed and cleaned and, very clean material before it ever gets to Kenmore.
Question?
Sure.
Yes, I was
Okay.
just wondering, how big is a
Yeah.
fully loaded barge?
The question is whether or not the Kenmore asphalt plant uses this same canal, and don't they in fact use old asphalt and bring that in barges? And if that's the case, then there's contaminated asphalt coming into that channel. Yes or no?
No,
Why?
they don't bring any asphalt in in barges. There's no asphalt coming in through barges. The only material that's coming in is clean sand and gravel that comes from our facilities. And we do sell them rock, clean rock. And that's one of the materials that's actually washed that second time is crushed rock.
Yeah.
That gets that extra wash.
Well, not to be argumentative, but when they decommissioned the 520 bridge, they did bring in broken asphalt into that very channel. And I don't think you're addressing the possibility of known contamination from the 520 breakup.
Material for the 520 went on a totally different spot. Nothing went through this facility, through our facility from the 520 bridge. That was all loaded in the other slip on the other side. I mean, we took clean gravel and used it to make concrete that went to the 520 bridge, but that was all new clean rock. I mean, the rock we use, the rock that we're taking, that out of this DuPont facility is used to remediate clean sediments. It's used to make cat material that we place down for, remediating contaminated sediment. And there's
I don't think that's not a dispute.
There's no used material that I am aware of has ever passed across our facility.
Your facility.
Exactly.
Peter Lance had a question too.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this picture of this barge, and I'm wondering, is this a half-filled barge or a fully loaded barge? And how big are these barges when full versus light load that you're hoping to get a fully loaded barge versus a half-loaded barge or light load?
Right. So the barges vary by customer. So this is not representative of barge that goes into Kenmore. This is a much bigger barge. So this would be this is on its way to becoming a fully loaded barge. The barges that go into Kenmore, Chuck, remind me, how much material are we currently bringing on a barge load?
So currently, right now, we can bring in a barge with 3,000 tons on it. And we, at one time, were able to bring in 4,500 ton barges. So that's what we're looking to get back to.
Thank you.
And this is probably a 10,000 ton barge.
Yeah, that's the killer whale right there. It's at least an 8.
Oh, well, one last question. How many barges come in a month or a year?
That would vary depending on business.
We're doing, what are you doing? Probably 5-6 barges a week now. Is that right?
Yeah, so I would say generally we're unloading, especially right now with limited capacity. We're doing one every day and sometimes on the weekends too. Especially on this last year, we were doing them on the weekends to prepare for lock closures. So we, with the increased capacity, we could look to, to see that decrease as far as the number of barges.
That's really what we're after here, because the problem has been two things. We're having to light load barges, so that's decreases efficiency substantially. And then the other thing is that we've had these lock closures, so we've had to try to stockpile material to make it through the lock closures that have been, a fairly extensive amount of time. So that means we're bringing in barges more regularly, and we would decrease the number of barges substantially if we could do the performance maintenance dredging. Other questions?
I don't see any out there, Pete.
All right.
Well, yeah, I have a question. I've run a dredge before, and I know that whenever you're doing dredging, there's sloughing from the material next to it, and there's nothing saying that you're not going to pull in slough material from the other side of the channel when you're going as deep as you are. So one of my concerns is that we get accurate testing on all the materials that are sloughing from the other side of the channel, which is a known hazardous waste dump.
Well, if you look at the bathymetry here, we're basically dredging the high spot, so we're not going to have material sloughing in. And we've had Anchor basically, and we've had Anchor engineer our dredge design, so we're not going to have material sloughing in. And of course, the purpose is to make sure that we have the final elevation where we need it, right? So we're dredging down basically to maintain the depth to the floor. It would be the different story if we were dredging to basically deepen the whole basin. And you're right, material would slough in, and that does happen in other places. But that's not really going to be a situation here. Because, as you can see, we're dredging a high spot.
For your specific plant.
Yeah, for this specific, all our dredging is going to see this magenta line. All our dredging is going to be basically, inside this magenta line.
Right. Can you point out where the asphalt plant is in reference to that whole bulkhead dock area?
It's off the page. It's up to the north here, north and east of here.
So there's not going to be any dredging in front of the asphalt plant, is what I'm assuming.
The asphalt plant's way clear on the other side of the property.
Yeah, I'd like to see your plants are very close to one another.
So the dredging is in this area, and the asphalt plant is way over here, right?
Yeah, but where they bring their material in is more to the point.
So the asphalt plant does not bring material in. The material that comes in on the barges, our material, is what supplies the asphalt plant.
Including any used asphalt is what I heard you say.
I don't see them.
You're telling me all used asphalt from other WashDOT projects only comes via truck, is what you're telling me?
None of it comes on our barges. That's what I'm telling you.
But it could come on somebody else's barges.
No,
Potentially.
There are no
I'm not
barges
saying it
of
is.
asphalt unloaded there.
they aren't bringing any barges of asphalt that I'm aware of at all, and it's certainly not going over our facility.
Our
Because,
conveyor
I mean,
system couldn't handle it.
yeah, I mean, and we wouldn't want the asphalt on our conveyor anyway, because we can't get it in our concrete. We gotta have clean rock. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's we're not debating that. We're debating the use of the asphalt plant to the dock facilities and the potential for any material that they've come in contact with polluting the bulkhead or along the area where barges would go or ships have gone. So
Well,
thank you for answering that question.
yeah, I'm not aware of them ever taking any asphalt in by barge, so. Todd, do you have a question? I'm sorry, you're on mute, sir.
I'm the harbor master and GM at Harbor Village Marina, your neighbor. And I feel like we're getting off topic. Everybody's time is very valuable, but we're discussing removing toxic sediment and soil. And it seems like the conversation, has been based on, other usages and past sins. And I guess I'm curious to, seeing the path forward. And I appreciate, everybody's time here, but I think we're getting derailed.
Not if it saves a court case.
Well, I guess to move along, we have reviewed the comments, and what we've decided to do is, we understand everybody's concerns about the gravel, and, we understand that there's contaminated sediment in the vicinity. And that's not in dispute. And we can't really, the issue with sampling the sand and gravel is kind of a problem, because it's crushed rock in there, and actually getting a sampler to penetrate it is difficult. And it's the time consuming and expense and the relatively small amount of sand and gravel we're sampling, we think it's going to make the most sense to just go ahead and treat the material as though it's contaminated. And so we'll take it and haul it to a waste disposal site, and won't reuse it. And, we'll remove it with an environmental bucket. We'll use all the same best management practices that we use at, another contaminated site, like down in the Duwamish River, where we've done another dredge project. And just, use all those appropriate measures, and take care of it that way.
Yeah, I'm in that meeting online with Cal Portland, so let me call you as soon as this thing's over. And yeah, and then we probably take your.
Hey,
Patrick O'Brien, your microphone's on, Patrick.
He's muted now.
Thanks.
And so there were a couple other concerns addressed in the comments. Concerns about water quality, of course. We'll have a water quality monitoring plan. That's pretty standard with the dredge project. We'll be under a 401 water quality permit. They'll be issued by Ecology, and they require us to have a water quality monitoring plan. And we'll have Anchor out doing the water quality monitoring when we're doing the dredging. And the way that works is you have an environmental bucket that closes and makes sure that that you're not like just sifting water through the bucket, and then you basically operate the dredge real slow so you don't make sure that you don't stir up a bunch of sediment. And you verify that you aren't causing turbidity by monitoring for it. The other concern was about air quality and dust. Of course, dredge material is very wet. We'll when we put the material up, we'll be dewatering it in one of the bunkers on site, and we'll have a berm that will filter out any silt, and of course it'll still be pretty moist when we go to haul it away, and we'll tarp trucks and everything. So, dust really should not be an issue any more than any other rock that's removed, but will be, of course, extra care to make sure that no dust is emitted from these materials, of course.
I see Jim Howard has a question.
Yes, I'm just a resident of Kenmore, but I have a question. I thought I heard you say that the sediment material could not be tested easily, and therefore you weren't going to do it. Is that right?
Yeah, we're not. When you get the sand and gravel like this and crushed rock in it, often the way you test it is you put like a core sampler in it. It just doesn't penetrate very well. So getting a representative sample is kind of difficult. And it just isn't cost effective for us. It's better off for us just to haul it and dispose of it as contaminated sediment. If it was a larger volume, it would make sense. But
I guess, that's the whole really issue, I think, is this potential for contamination of the sediment. And once it's moved, it's going to move within the water. And, I don't understand how this project can go forward without understanding the potential for contaminants in that material before it gets moved. I'm very surprised to hear that you're not going to test it for contaminants. You don't know what you're working with. You say it's sand and gravel, but sediments do move by definition from one place to another. So, and we all know there's contaminants nearby. So just in the water movement, there could be materials that over time have, very small particles that fill the voids of what your clean material was originally.
So let's just play devil's advocate for a minute. So say, for example, we did test it and it's contaminated. What would we do differently?
Well, I'm not the expert, but I would, just as a citizen, I would like to know what we're dealing with.
So
Hey, Riley, can you jump in and talk about the SEPA process?
Yeah, so just to jump in for a second. So the project is undergoing a SEPA review, and what we're anticipating is that we'll probably issue a mitigated determination of non-significance, which allows us to add conditions to the project. And one of those conditions will be that we will require sediment testing.
Okay. Seems like it'd be better to do it sooner rather than later, but I'm glad to hear the city is going to do that. So.
Yeah. See.
Janet?
Did you say Janet?
Yes, ma'am.
What I'm questioning is you are saying that you're going to get this SEPA part done, and then that will give the opportunity to do more in-depth testing, and that would be right at the east end of the private navigation channel. Is that correct?
I think that the testing that the city would require would be in the vicinity of the area to be dredged, so it wouldn't be further east than the dredging area.
Well, the pictures showed that they were right at the end on the north bank where they unload the barges that do come in.
Yeah, so I don't think it's exactly determined where the testing would be yet. That would be something that we'd look to guidance from Ecology and the Army Corps of Engineers on to get the most effective sample.
I have
But-
gone through as much history as I can to find out when the sediment in any of the birthing channel was tested. I do have a sampling test that was done, a snatch and grab, that is only 4 inches into the water, but nothing deeper than that. And the concerns that I have very definitely are testing in that whole entire birthing channel.
Yeah.
Tests have been denied to DOE. They don't, or declined when offered. And we have 4 companies there, Pioneer Towing, the cement plant, Kenmore Air. And I would be interested, if you're going to do testing, why is the answer always no? We did have an excess, and still do, of dioxin in our federal navigation channel. But this little navigation channel, the birthing channel, we don't. So they have never found the source of the dioxin that was at Harbor Village Marina. And previous to having that test done in 2011, Harbor Village Marina did their own dredging project in 2004 in December, done on a Sunday by Waterfront Construction. And that all those dredge spoils were put on the land, used for landscape. Then come along 2011, they found out that it was dioxins. Yeah, that was the biggest problem. So our concern is when we walk along maybe the parkway in front of Harbor Village Marina and it's a dry day and the wind is blowing, are we still breathing that?
Yeah, so
there's so many things that you could correct with just testing of the navigation channel to make sure that the birthing channel, to make sure that that is not the source of the dioxin that was found at Harbor Village Marina. It was also found at North Lake Marina.
Sorry, just to jump in, I think what you're thinking might be a little bit outside of the scope of this project. So for this project, we're going to require sediment testing, but because the project itself is limited to dredging of this area, we couldn't require testing in different areas not associated with the project. So that type of testing kind of along different areas would be a much bigger project.
The tugs and barges go past both of them. The amount of loads, the turbidity, all of it go right back out to the federal channel, navigation channel.
Right.
What we know had dioxins when it was just dredged.
Yeah, but this project and specifically what's covered under the SEPA review, so that activity has been ongoing and is not up for question under this particular review. So this is really just about the dredging itself, where the barges unload and making sure that there's not impacts to water quality based on the actual dredging action. So it's kind of a limited scope.
And Janet, I think if you're talking about like source materials, this would still be a good place to get that information, to be able to do the testing here, if that's what we're looking at. And that is, like we said, going to be a condition of the mitigated SEPA determination. And so that's on the city side under SEPA. There is another permit with ecology. And so as we're talking about permit conditions, we can't speak on behalf of ecology on what may be required for them, but we are saying that there will be testing in this area as it's shown on the screen here for testing for chemicals of concern.
Thank you.
We have Jill Cooper has had her hand up for a while.
Go
Hi,
ahead,
thanks.
Jill.
I'm an environmental consultant with Marine Surveys and Assessments, and I work for Harbor Village. I'm helping them out with their dredge planning, and I can understand that from a regulatory standpoint, that there wouldn't necessarily need to be sampling of that particular spot if it's going to be handled as if it's the most toxic material, you know, even if you think it's not. But my question is, if we were treating it as if it's toxic or that there might be toxic sediments underneath it, are the agencies going to require a cap of clean sediments to be placed on top like they usually would?
They may. We're having that conversation.
Gotcha.
But Jill,
Thanks.
it might be worth noting that dredging is occurring to the top of the existing tow protection surface layer adjacent to the berth as well. So in that area, there's already protection in place.
That's not true.
Okay, what's the truth?
The truth is that we have pictures of your barges coming in for years, and the sediment was disturbed, and sediment from the tug and barges was deposited on your cap material in the very exact area you're hoping to dredge. And you're saying there's no other chance of material having been entered on top of that or part of that. And I understand and I appreciate you're going to dispose of that material in the most sanitary way possible. And for that, thank you. But it does not belay the fact that we have lots of evidence of where that site and all the sites, including the sites to get in there, wasn't affected by heavy barge and tug use that stirred the sediments up and will continue to once you add needed draft for the tonnage of gravel you're going to need. That means it's going to be lower in the water and has more of an ability to impact the area in the channel prior to getting it to your dock. And so.
True.
Mr. O'Brien, was that your question, or did you have something else?
Well, that, and then I think this area in general, you cannot really control exactly how dredging all goes, how it goes to form depth and what other sediments you can unintentionally impact outside of that area. And certainly, since it's already been admitted that the area is contaminated, then why not? And that the whole use of the channel could further put pollutants in the water. Why not do a complete panel with arsenic, lead, dioxins, PCBs, and let's really find out where that is and then try to source where that pollution is coming from before we get all involved with having more and bigger ship traffic.
Well, I think you're talking about a completely different project for like identifying source control, identifying doing a remedial investigation out here. I mean, there's been a lot of work that's been done to identify that there's contaminated sediments out here. We're talking about a different situation where we know exactly what the source of the material is. We know how it got there. I mean, the other parts of the river or other parts of the lake, we really don't. You don't know how the stuff got into the other parts of the lake, and you don't know how the contaminants got there. That's a different question and a different process for determining all the answer to all those questions. And what we're doing here is trying to identify what we can do to return this berthing area to the depth that it can be operable and we can continue to operate. The question about what are the contaminants, how did they get there, how is it going to be cleaned up? That is another larger question that needs to be addressed. And there's a whole nother process and a whole nother regulatory framework that is done under. Ms. Hayes, you're muted.
We have Elizabeth Mooney has had her hand up for a while.
How deep do you plan? I realize that the entire berthing channel needs to be dredged. It has not been dredged for years. It wasn't even dredged previous to when we received all the cement from the 520 bridge. There was 2 Clean Water Acts, which were because some of the cement and things because of the way they had to unload it and not have it ever touch the water ended up going into the water. Lots of that happened. So I've lost my question, but I'll ask again. Thank you.
Elizabeth?
Thank you. Yeah, Elizabeth Mooney, president of PERC, People for Environmentally Responsible Kenmore. We did get involved with the 520 bridge, so I just want to take us back to some clarification that some of these citizens are bringing up that I think really gets to the hope that as Kenmore citizens, a lot of us really want to restore the shoreline. And a lot of us believe with our city putting so much money into promoting swimming at Log Boom Park, it's a little distance from Cal Portland, I realize, but we need to start acting maybe in different ways, knowing that now we've got small children swimming at Log Boom Park. Anchor was I think involved back then in testing in I think 2012. But let me just point out, Janet's mentioning Clean Water Act suits. When the 520 bridge came up and I was going regularly, Todd, to Harbor Village Marina, I took the picture of the barge crane that KGM pulled in, despite us saying there's a large area there that is not deep enough for that KGM crane to come in. And I think maybe Laura Inouye at Department of Ecology was part of the ERTs back then. I might be wrong, but I did file a complaint. I think Janet Hayes and I were involved in that. And then not only, and we filed it because from Kenmore Air, we could see the crane very easily. We could see the milky cafe latte color of the water that had been dredged up that drifted to the north towards Cal Portland's docks. I mean, just in that general area. I'm not saying it went to Cal Portland, but then I ran over to take pictures at Harbor Village Marina, and you could confirm that light silt was with the wind going from the more southern area where the KGM barge had come in with a giant red crane. So there was regular disturbance during that project that we were able to capture in photographs and tried to, make a difference back then. I don't think anything has been done about testing the consequences of those disturbances that unearthed the bottom sediment. I think those are called shorelands. They're in somebody else's jurisdiction. I don't know if that's Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. I've forgotten if it's DNR. That I think it's DNR that is in charge. Jill, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not knowing all the different regulatory agencies, but ultimately, the Army Corps, way back before that 520 bridge, they're the ones who said it is a surprising high amount of dioxins, and we don't know the source. And that's way back, 10 years ago. So we as a city really, we don't want heavy industry anymore contaminating places where now we have swimming and small children going out. We're promoting swimming at Logboom Park, and we do not know the source of the dioxins, the PCBs, the arsenic, the tributyl tins. And furthermore, since you share, Pete, you share that birthing channel with the owner of Lake Point. I don't even know who owns Lake Point. It's not Lake Point, it's Kenmore Industrial Park. And my understanding during COVID from Bob Warren, who's the head of the Matka Point, and he's now retired, we've got a lack of people knowing what's been going on for all these years. So Laura Inouye is the only person that I recognize that's been in this game other than Cal Portland. There used to be Matt Hink. So these citizens here, Janet Hayes and Patrick O'Brien and I, and the former owner sorry, I'm like lapsing on the names of my pal David Templeton's company. But it's our responsibility to keep pointing out to the city, great that you are listening to us. Thank you, Samantha, for listening to me and Jim Myers coming in. We need to test deeply enough as Army Corps would normally require to find out what's under the gravel. There's nobody's going to pretend that you can't have had contaminants going on top of the gravel. And if you need to dig deeper, my question would be, is the Army Corps, is Department of Ecology, and the other agencies that are trying to protect our fish, like Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, are they going to back up the city and the citizens and say to these giant companies, hey, are we still going to not require them to test to find the source of the dioxins that back in 2011 they said, yeah, that's bizarre. We have kids swimming, and we need to have the big guys do what they should do for public health and safety, as well as our ecology, which is getting more and more destroyed. It's the death by 1,000 cuts. And if we don't hold them accountable now, then we're going to feel that the agencies are not backing up the little people. Some of our friends have died. Ann Hurst died. And we don't want to have more people dying of cancer. And we certainly don't want, like, my grandchildren getting exposed to drifting cafe latte stuff that comes up. The sturgeon died. The only good thing about the sturgeon dying is it got a lot of young people with small children saying, why did a sturgeon die at Logboom Park where we bring our kids? I know that's not why, I'm not saying that's why it died, but we want the agencies to back up our city right now to do the right thing. And that's testing deeply enough to find out who the culprit is and then who is going to pay for it. Is it a Superfund site? Or is it that somebody else besides Cal Portland is going to take responsibility? Like maybe the owner.
Elizabeth, and
Yeah.
sorry, I might ask for a pause
Sorry.
real quick just to give the other agencies a chance to respond to that question, because I know each agency has their own process for reviewing this type of project.
It'd be great to have an answer on that one.
I'll respond. I'll respond to that, Elizabeth. I hear you. I mean, I understand that you're concerned about the dioxin and the sediment, and that makes a lot of sense to me. Um, dioxin is toxic stuff, no doubt about it. We are a concrete plant. We manufacture concrete. We have concrete plants all over. We have concrete plant in the Duwamish waterway. We have tested the sediment there. Has been tested extensively as part of the Superfund site, where we discharge our processed water directly to the waterway. And you know, if there was any reason to believe that our concrete operation was a source of dioxin, I can guarantee you that, number one, ecology and EPA would be all over us. But number two, we would be very, very concerned about it and doing what we could about it, because the liability is horrendous, horrendous. And it's not something that we want. You know, I mean, to just bury your head in the sand as a company these days and deny that, you know, you have this kind of liability is just foolish. And we're not doing that. The problem here is that if you wait for just a moment, the problem here is that just simply sampling, I mean, even if we find dioxin in this gravel, I mean, it won't tell us anything really, because maybe it just came from the sediment that was resuspended and deposited there. We don't have a source. We still don't have a source, right? You still have to go hunt down the source. And the source is someplace else at the north end of the lake. I don't know what it is. It's not coming from the concrete.
Right.
That's all I know. Now, go ahead, Janet.
Yes, and you're correct. But the history of that particular site, Lake Point, we're not just saying it's coming from the cement plant or coming from the asphalt plant. That was built up on debris from the I-5 freeway being built. It began in 1957 and went until 1965. That property was not property. There are on all of and an unlined landfill also was there at that Lake Point property. That's not the property you're on, Pete.
Right.
That's not saying that it's coming from you. It's saying could it be leaking out? How can we find out unless we do some kind of testing? It's continued since it's been called a Nootka site to contaminate. Dredge brought from Hog Canal was brought there in 2010, and that was not supposed to be brought anywhere other than upland. It was all right across that little birthing channel from you. It could have
again, we're talking about this maintenance dredging project, right?
Yes.
And at this point, I understand that all this other work needs to happen and should be done. But at this point, you know, we're proposing this maintenance dredge project and this specific work. And so there's a limited scope to what it is. The other stuff has to happen too. That's a different project. That's a different process. And, you know, that's a different project and it's a different process.
It's still the same pair of pants. Right there. Well, I'm sorry. That's just the way I've got. It's a whole area. It's not just you can come in and change that. You have the opportunity to test.
Yeah, and just to reiterate again, the city will be requiring testing as a condition of the SEPA approval. That's part of our anticipated decision.
So
Here.
we've been going an hour here, so I want to give anybody an opportunity that hasn't had a chance to talk to ask a question or to talk if there's anyone.
I have just a quick follow-up
Go ahead,
question about
Jim.
the
Yep.
testing. Jim Howard. First of all, what year was the topographic survey done that we're looking at?
This is a couple years old. I think it's 2 years old now.
And is it for the entire thing that we're seeing out on the screen right now, that was all done approximately 2 years ago? Or is it just your little project area?
I think that's right, yeah. Yeah, it was the whole berth there, yeah.
The whole berthing slip then was one topographic survey that was done 2 years ago.
I think that's right, yeah.
Okay. And then as far as the testing, I heard that the city's going to require testing will be tested while in its current location, but then also once it's removed, will there be a two-step process to the testing?
That's not set in stone just yet. We've been coordinating with other agencies to see what they recommend. So we're kind of still in the process of determining how much and when the testing will be required.
Okay. And then I heard, that, if contaminants are found in the sediment, that, what happens next? And in terms of finding the source of the contaminants. But that's the real question. If we are finding, the whole key to this project seems to be if contaminants are found, where are they coming from, and will there be further testing done if contaminants are found? Because obviously they're more than likely moving laterally from a relatively short distance. And so that's a question for the city, I guess. Is there going to be more testing required if contaminants are found in that initial testing?
I guess I might pass that question on to Laura with ecology. I'm not sure if there are any larger plans for the area to determine where the source of contamination is coming from or not.
Well, I guess my question would be, we're kind of just speculating at this point if there's going to be contaminants found in that initial testing, but if it is found, just common sense would tell you that it's moving laterally in the water from a relatively short distance, I would say, just from common sense. So that's the question to the city, and I would hope that there would be a wider testing required if there is contaminants found in the initial testing. And I don't know what level of testing you're going to do I assume there's regulatory standards that, you'll be testing to. That'd be a question. And I don't know if anybody can answer that or not.
There are sediment criteria.
I think there was a question thrown my way. This is Laura Enoa from the Department of Ecology. If sampling is conducted and the levels of contamination is elevated and adds to the data set that we have in this area, I am frankly the wrong part of ecology, but I'm part of the group that does the 401 certification. So this group will eventually have to come to ecology for the water quality certification. And just so that you guys know, we don't even have a pre-app. This permit has not come to ecology yet. This is pre-permitting. But if data does come back indicating there is a potential for source in this section, I would be forwarding that information to the cleanup program, and the toxics cleanup program is not represented at this meeting. So I am not the correct contact as mentioned earlier, Bob Warren has retired. So there's still backfilling a bunch of people over there. I do have I think she's still interim program manager, Bob Warren's replacement. I have contact information for who is doing the job at this time, and it would be passed on to them. But that's not, I can't speak for ecology on what would be done with that because I'm the wrong section of ecology.
Okay, we'll just have to wait until we get the test results and then go from there at this point, sounds like.
Okay, Mr. O'Brien, I think you get the last word. You're on mute.
Well, thank you for having this meeting. I look forward to having another meeting where the citizens can work in consort with the regulatory agencies and the city of Kenmore. And I think we would like to be able to prove that there is significance to testing as stated, and the scope of which is yet to be determined. But certainly for PCB, lead, arsenic, and dioxins. So those are the tests we're interested in. And we have nothing against the cement plant, but we think the development of the whole area and any can of worms you open intentionally or unintentionally, that all needs to be tested to the highest degree possible. And that scrutiny for those things needs to be participated in by the citizens that have tracked this for years and have lots of evidence. So I think it would be disrespectful not to have another meeting where we could present our paperwork in a live brick and mortar, and possibly another meeting like this to have it accessible to everyone. So thank you.
So just to clarify on that, the city can't require another meeting. So there's already been the public comment period, and then this meeting was a voluntary meeting. So yeah,
Right.
the code doesn't.
You need to offer the same to the citizens here, and not, because it seems awfully one-sided that you're determining this permit and not giving the citizens an opportunity to present their information. So if you want to have fair play, they had their meeting. The agencies participated. We want to have a meeting where we can control the information presented. That seems fair if you're going to be even-handed in your regulatory job.
Got it. I think that. Go for it, Pete.
We held this meeting as a courtesy, sir, and you know,
we
really
attended as a courtesy.
So
yeah, we attended as a courtesy, and
we've
we've got tens of years into this whole issue.
So we appreciate your coming and providing input, and we'll take it into consideration. And we're continuing to work forward on this. I'm sure you'll hear more. But thanks so much for everybody coming and participating today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.